Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the managing director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. So there's this rating agency out there called Fitch. I've mentioned them now in a couple of different videos going back into this past summer when there was an article in the Bangkok Post and it was written in a very weird way. It basically said, oh, the Fitch rating agencies think that Thailand may have some issues in their banking sector or something of this nature. I'll put the video links in the description below so you can see my full analysis. But when you read to the end, it actually said at the end within the article itself that, well, actually the banks don't have any problems. So it was very circular, and it was all coming out at a time where Thailand was going through some political turbulence. And it's my opinion that there were influences outside of Thailand who were attempting to make things worse financially for Thailand, essentially try to trigger a sort of 1997-like event so that Thailand would be sort of economically, financially on her back, and then these outside foreign interests could benefit from it. And this was all happening while politically in the foreground, we were having all this turbulence associated with the border. We're also having turbulence associated with, the fact that our prior acting prime minister, who was a member of the Communist Party of Thailand at one point, had decided to try to go ahead and dissolve the House without legal authority to do so, which was also kind of causing some turbulence at the time. But all during this, Fitch decides, and the Bangkok Post puts out an article that, Thailand's banking system might be shaky, was basically the crux of the article, or that was the idea that I think was being put forth when you read through it and they had to actually sort of cover their bases on what they were saying. You saw that, no, there's really actually not an issue, that the DSIB banks here in Thailand are actually quite solid, but they were trying to kind of stir up a storm in a teacup, I think. And Fitch was involved with that. And I brought it up at the time, and I referenced The Big Short in the thumbnail that, Fitch was one of the rating agencies when you go back to the Great Financial Crisis, or sometimes referred to as the Lehman Crisis. They were the ones that were just rating things well. There were, let's just say, there were aspersions cast that they were sort of rating things well because it was in their interest to continue to get the work rating things, is basically the gist of it. And I went into all of this in the prior video. Again, I'll reference it. I'll cite it in the link. I'll put a link in the description below. In any event, it looks like we're back. Or it looks like Fitch is back. And I'm asking a genuine question at this point. Does Fitch have some kind of problem with Thailand? Thought of making this video after reading a recent article from the Pattaya Mail. That's pattayamail.com. Article is titled, Vietnam Surges Ahead as Chinese Tourists Flock In While Thailand Faces Troubling Signs for Its Tourism Industry. So first off, it's kind of a, and I don't think Pattaya Mail is being disingenuous in their reporting here. Let me be clear. But there does seem to be this trend or theme of, one, constantly comparing Thailand to other jurisdictions in ASEAN as if there's a one-to-one comparison. Not always the case. And also there seems to constantly, at least in the last 10 years I remember living here, there's been this sort of ongoing narrative of, Vietnam surging ahead. It's going to take Thailand's place in the, they're going to eat Thailand's lunch when it comes to tourism, etc. Couple of things there. One, the numbers, even within this article, and I urge those who are watching this video, go check out Pattaya Mail and read it for yourself. But they said Vietnam's projected to have 17 million tourists this year. Well, Thailand did double that year, last year, as I recall. I'm not saying we might not have a down year, but again, one, the numbers just aren't quite there to be like, oh my gosh, Thailand better watch out. By any metric, I think this year is going to be a low-high season for a variety of different reasons. The machinations of the prior government didn't help, especially on the topic of cannabis, because it scared off a lot of the quote-unquote green season tourists who stayed here during low season because they want to be here because of the legality of cannabis, as well as other things. I think that had put a damper on the tourism numbers. And look, we're going through a period of official national state mourning here with the loss of Her late Majesty, the Queen Mother. That is going to have an impact on the overall mood of things here in Thailand, which I think can have a concomitant effect on tourism generally. Frankly, I think it was going to be a low-high season no matter how we cut it going into this year. because on top of everything else, the international economy is not in the greatest of shape either. So the standard tourists that we were used to getting are not coming in here quite in the numbers that we're used to seeing them. Now, when it comes to the Chinese, yeah, there's been a lowering of numbers regarding that. Anutin recently was talking to Z. Now that casinos appear to be completely off the table, the Chinese, it looks like we're probably going to see more of those tourists coming in. But one other non-one-to-one comparison between Vietnam and Thailand is this. Vietnam borders China. Thailand doesn't. So anytime they bring up Chinese tourists, I always find it a little bit disingenuous because it's like, well, what are you counting as Chinese tourists? Is it people crossing across that border and maybe doing it daily? Because there are people that live along borders between those two countries. And again, I don't know a lot about the Vietnamese-Chinese border, but if it's anything like the border with Laos, the border with Cambodia used to be here in Thailand up until, again, this past summer, borders in other places in Southeast Asia, it's not uncommon to see people maybe not cross the border every day to do something, but maybe once a month. It's very common for people that live in those places because oftentimes they'll shop because they can get different things on the other side of the border than what they can get on their side of the border. My point is, at the end of the day, when you look at, when you say, oh, there's a huge influx of Chinese tourists into Vietnam, yeah, they border each other. I mean, you know, I think I may make this a thumbnail, but there's a scene from the movie The Usual Suspects where Kevin Pollak's character, they're interrogating him and they say, hey, you know, we can put you in Queens on the night of the hijacking. And he says, yeah, I live in Queens. What, do you got a team of monkeys working on the case? All that, you know, I'm not trying to cast aspersions or put anything in the pejorative here with regard to the Vietnamese-Chinese border situation. The point I'm trying to make is they border each other. That inherently is going to cause them to have a lot higher numbers of entrants from that bordering state. Just one man's opinion on that, but I think that's sort of self-evident if you really think about it. That said, the reason for the video, quoting directly, across the Gulf, Thailand's tourism engine shows worrying cracks. Analysts from BMI under Fitch Solutions note that Chinese tourists are now choosing Vietnam over Thailand as their top destination. Really? And are they? Or are we just seeing 1 year where this is what the tourism numbers look like? You know, I mean, so because some Chinese people went to Vietnam, now forever the Chinese are only going to go to Vietnam for tourism purposes? What's the point of this data? You know, other than there has been this constant refrain, theme, narrative of Thailand's got economic problems, therefore she has to do all this stuff like join OECD, like have the digital wallet, like change everything around about this, that, or the other thing, change herself, if you will, in order to get with the program, get with the times. I just find it nonsensical. And honestly, especially in light of the fact of the prior videos I made with regard to some of the data we've seen from Fitch on this stuff and then how it's presented in the media apparatus, I look at this as something, the notion that Thailand really needs to watch out or all of this just analysis, I think needs to be taken with a big grain of salt.